So what we're going to do now is create a base controller, and if we go to our API and take a look at our two controllers that we have now, then there are some commonalities between them. First of all, both controllers have a root and an API controller attribute. They both inherit from controller base, and in the case of all of the controllers that we create from now on, we also inject mediator into the constructor of the controller. So what we're going to do is create a base controller that provides all of this, so that when we derive from our new base controller, we don't need to add all of these common attributes that we've been adding so far into our controllers. So we'll head back to Explorer, and inside the controllers folder, I'm just going to create a new C# class, and I'm going to call it base controller. And unfortunately, Microsoft have already taken controller base, so this is the name that I'm kind of left with in this particular case. So this base controller is going to derive from controller base, and we'll need to bring in ASP.NET Core MVC. And what we also need inside here is the root and the API controller. And because we're using the placeholder for the controller name, then this is going to be the same for any controller that we create. Now what we also need inside here is to provide the mediator and inject it into any controllers that derive from this base controller. And what we'll do inside here, we'll create a private field, and it's going to be of type iMediator, and we'll specify this name as _mediator. And we'll need to bring in using mediator, and then we'll create a protected property. And protected properties are only accessible by this particular class and any classes that derive from this base controller. And our protected field will be iMediator, and we'll just call this mediator with a capital M, and we'll create an expression, and we'll set this mediator to the mediator private field if we have anything in there. And if this is null, then what we'll do is we'll go and get an instance of this from our services. So what we'll do, we'll open some parentheses and we'll say mediator equals http context dot request services dot get service, and then we can specify the type as iMediator and close the parentheses there. Now the get service needs to use Microsoft Extension's dependency injection, but for whatever reason this kind of doesn't automatically import, and it's been that way for quite some time. So we'll need to add a using statement manually up here, and we'll say Microsoft.extensions.dependency injection, and then the error goes away. So what we can do is we can now use our base controller inside our activities controller, and instead of deriving from controller base, we'll derive from base controller. And what this means is we no longer need to provide the root or the API controller attribute, because that will be coming from our base controller. And we can also remove the constructor inside here as well. And what we'll need to do then is, instead of _mediator, we'll specify mediator, which is the protected field that's coming from the base controller, and we'll say mediator.send using that field instead of the one that we've just removed. So I'll just do the same for the other methods inside here as well, and just replace them. And do this for all of the methods. And what we should do now is make sure that this has actually not broken anything. So let's just make sure our application has restarted, and mine has. And if we go across to Postman, inside the module 12 folder, there's a request for getting the activities using our new base controller. And let's send this request And what we find is we get a 200 OK response, and we see all of our activities inside here. So now that we have a base controller, what we'll do next is we'll create our new user controller, and we'll make sure that we can log in our users.